Africans love rice. We spend billions of dollars every year importing it from Asia. But now the Gambian president, Yahya Jammeh, is vowing to ban rice importation by 2016. This may be desirable, but is it feasible? And where the Gambia leads today, could the rest of Africa follow tomorrow?
It's a staple consumed all over Africa. The perfect addition to meat, fish or stew. And at 20 million tonnes a year and rising, Africans just can't get enough of it. But the continent, which has 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, imports nearly half the rice it needs, costing governments billions of dollars. But this African leader says enough is enough. President Yahya Jammeh of the Gambia has launched an ambitious plan to grow enough rice to become self-sufficient within 2 years. The Côte d'Ivoire wants to go even further. It's determined to become West Africa's biggest rice producer, aiming to become an exporter by 2018. Yet to overcome their rice deficit, countries like the Gambia will have to invest not only in the capacity of its farmers, but also in technology to realise Jammeh's vision, 2016.
Indeed, so what chance of the Gambia achieving its target of rice self-sufficiency by 2016? And what about other African countries like Nigeria, which are also massively dependent? Hello, I'm Henry Bonsu and this is Africa Today. With me in the studio to talk rice are Abdoulaye Job, Secretary General of CORDEG, the Committee for the Restoration of Democracy in the Gambia. Also here is Dr. Joe Okimenam, an expert on African development who's worked with the UN and other major organizations. And on the line from the Gambia is Dr. Sidat Yafa from the School of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences at the University of the Gambia. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Yafa, you're on the ground there, probably on a field trip somewhere up country. We're going to start off with you. The president is confident. His special advisor, Professor Wale Adekunle, says he's confident of meeting this deadline. What about you?
Well, you know, it's one thing to have a vision, and it's another thing to have that vision go through, to see it go through successfully. We are waiting to see what's going to happen because, to be honest with you, as a professional in agriculture and a research agronomist, I have not seen the blueprint for this 2016 vision. So all that I'll be talking about on this show tonight is just to look at different variables that will contribute to rice self-sufficiency in the Gambia. For me, I'm sitting on the fence. I'm trying to see if whether it's going to go through or if it is not going to go through. So we'll see. That's a declaration from the president of the Gambia.
But the Gambia has been trying to increase its rice cultivation and indeed yield at harvest for years now. I mean, you've had so many partners, the Taiwanese, the Chinese, of course, the British during colonial times, and still you only produce 15% each year of the rice you consume. How on earth are you going to bridge that gap of 85% in just over a year's time?
Yeah, that's a big question I personally have for this new government policy. I don't know how it's going to go. Like I said, without seeing the policy document, it's going to be very unfair on my side to talk much about it, but I'll try my best. Because if you look at the rice production, like you rightly said, in the late 60s to early 70s when I was a kid, there were the Chinese and then there were the Taiwanese. So they produced a lot of rice for the country for local consumption without exporting anything. But as we went through all the way to now, the production has gone down. What were the factors responsible for that drop in production? I think because maybe less investment on the part of the government to put more money into it. Because if you look at the CADEP, Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program by the African Union, which states that all African countries should at least a minimum of 10% of the national GDP into agricultural production. The Gambia, I don't think we have attained that target because I have some politicians who are my friend in the National Assembly of the Gambia, and I asked them what percentage have you guys contributed toward agriculture development. So some of the numbers, some will tell me 5%, so far some will tell me 6%. So it means we are below target of the 10%. And I strongly believe that in order to increase rice production in the Gambia, we have to have a heavy investment into it, farmer training, marketing, because those are the major constraints in rice production in the Gambia and all the cereal crop production in the Gambia.
Well, that's
So I
what
think the
Gambian farmers say
government-
in surveys, and they have been asked by a number of stakeholders. Let's bring this into the studio, Dr. Yaffa. Abdullah Job, I suspect you're not going to be sitting on the fence. What do you think the Gambia needs to do to try and meet that target, or do you think it's really a waste of time? There's no way you can increase the yield that quickly, no matter who the expert is coming in from Nigeria or elsewhere?
I think the Gambia needs to be realistic in its aims. The government needs to be very realistic. This is a huge social transformation we're talking about, huge social engineering project of bringing about bringing about rice self-sufficiency. You mentioned yourself that only about 10 to 15% is all that the Gambia produces for itself.
Yeah.
The rest, food imports, rice imports have been going up all the time.
You spend around $50 million US a year on imports of rice from Thailand, maybe mainly, and India. Is that a shame?
It's a big shame. We've been independent for about 50 years now. Rice is the main staple of the Gambia. There have been projects, the gentleman mentioned the Chinese projects back in the 70s and 80s. All of them failed.
And are these projects normally to improve the irrigation, the pumps? Because I'm no technician, I'm no agronomist, but for the people watching this who like to eat their rice with the African foods, and they'll be thinking, why can we not produce more? Is it a lack of technology? Are there not enough farmers?
These were all experiments in forms of appropriate technology, in extension work, and so on. Now, the fundamental issues have not been addressed. Land tenure system in the Gambia, for example, in the countryside where rice is produced, because it is not produced anywhere else, the land belongs to traditional families. We call them founding families. They own large tracts of land they are unable to bring under cultivation. Those who work on the land usually have usury rights over the land. They have no security of tenure. And therefore, you won't be able to carry out a development program where people that work on the land don't own the land, they have no security of tenure on the land. That's one huge problem which this plan, for example, simply identifies as an issue. It doesn't go into any detail to give an impression of how they're going to deal with that. That's one issue. Secondly, it's rain-fed agriculture. Yeah. That's what you've got in the Gambia. The rainfalls are erratic, they're very short, and the distribution is uneven. Yeah. And therefore, you've got to then go into irrigation. Now, it's only about 6% of the irrigation potential is being used in the Gambia. Now, that will require large resource commitment, training. It will require a large outlay of monies, of resources, etc. The Gambia doesn't have that. They're talking about 300 million is what this will cost. Where is the money coming from? They're talking about budgetary support. They're talking about money coming from village savings, for God's sake. What village savings are we talking about?
Well, let me bring Dr. Joe Okimenam into this. You're a Nigerian like Professor Adekunle, so maybe we can lend on your expertise. How much confidence do you have in this plan, or do you think, like two previous speakers, there are real problems with it?
I think the government is showing leadership here. And my experience in a lot of African countries is that the masses, the general population, have got to demonstrate their willingness for a particular program to succeed before it can succeed. It does not matter all the theories you throw at it or money. If the populace refuses to engage, then you're wasting your time.
But why would the populace refuse to engage if it's going to benefit them, if it's going to place a smaller burden on their government, if they produce, and it will even increase jobs,
indeed,
if you produce more rice at home? Why would they not engage?
You've got to sell it to them. You've got to make them stakeholders. You've got to make them buy into it. There's no need, no use putting this whole thing within the framework of major producers, landowners, and all those things, because you're setting the cat among the pigeons. Yeah. You've got to move it in a way in which ordinary persons can feel that they can cultivate rice at their backyard and still feed their family.
So what are the incentives that the Gambian government, led by the president, what are the incentives they could give to the 40,000 smallholder farmers and the others higher up the chain? What kinds of things should they be saying?
Well, they should look at the policies which they are setting up and see how ordinary people can see this big project, as benefiting themselves. I I quite agree with him that any leader should actually take the bull by the horn and call out a particular project as one in which his legacy is going to stand on. Maybe this is what he wants to do, but he has to take the people with him. And if he doesn't take the people with him, he's going to fail. That is happening in Nigeria. It's happening in most of other African countries. But here he has chosen a subject that is very close to people's hearts, to their families.
Because which African does not like rice?
Well,
you know, with their stew, with their chicken.
That's right.
With their fish.
Now you're making me hungry.
Well, let's go back to the Gambia and resume our conversation with Dr. Yafa. Do you feel that the Gambian population has been stirred by this? Do they believe in Vision 2016? You know, grow what you eat what you grow.
Yeah, I think many Gambians are kind of fired up by this political slogan, eat what you grow and grow what you eat, since the president came to power in 1994. But let me give you some historical perspective. You know, after the Chinese kind of quote-unquote went out of the rice production in the Gambia, then we had this United States government support through the United States Agency for International Development, the USAID, for the soil and water management project in the Gambia, one of the best agricultural projects in the Gambia. That's my opinion, because I was part of that project for 12 years. Because what really happened was the primary objective was to conserve upland soils from soil erosion in order to increase the cereal production and all the vegetable production. But the farmers knew that their major concern was the rice production in the lowland areas. So they have kind of shifted our target in terms of moving us to the lowland, and then we started constructing freshwater impounding dikes for them, and that has increased the rice production in the West Coast region for about 20 to 25%. So that's a classical example. So what I think could be done, what the government could have the political will, the government could have money. They may have the money. I don't know where the money is coming from, to be honest with you. Like I said, I don't have much information about this